Chapter 1. The Funeral. The air in the chapel was thick with grief, yet Emma Rowe sat still, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her face expressionless. She hadn't cried. Not once. Not even when the nurses had pulled the white sheet over her mother's face in the hospital room 2 weeks ago. Not even when the doctor had said the words she never wanted to hear. We did all we could. She had cried enough in the months leading up to her mother's death. The real tears had come late at night, in the silence of the hospital hallway, or in the darkness of her childhood bedroom, where the smell of lavender still lingered from her mother's perfume. Now, there was only numbness. Emma's eyes scanned the chapel. It was modest, just like her mother would have wanted. A few friends, some distant relatives, colleagues from the university where her father taught. And then her gaze stopped. Celia Hart, and next to her, a little boy, no more than 10, with big hazel eyes and neatly combed hair. He clung to Celia's arm tightly, nervous, as if he didn't belong. Emma's breath caught. She had seen them once, only once, 3 years ago, walking out of a cafe near campus. Her father had insisted it was a misunderstanding. A colleague, he had said. A friend going through a hard time. Emma had believed him. Or perhaps she had wanted to. Now, there they were, sitting in the front row, at her mother's funeral. She felt her stomach twist. Her father, Robert Rowe, stood at the podium, clearing his throat. He looked older than he had just weeks ago, hair grayer, shoulders sunken. His voice cracked as he spoke about love, resilience, and memory, about how her mother, Elise, had been the heart of their home. The silence in the room was heavy, every word echoing like a wound being reopened. Emma didn't hear most of it. She was staring at the child. He turned slightly and looked back at her, those eyes meeting hers, unsure, almost hopeful. She turned away. After the service, people began to leave. Condolences were whispered. Hugs were offered. Emma stood near the door, her body stiff as people passed by. Emma, a gentle voice said behind her. She turned. It was Celia, dressed in black. Hands folded, eyes low. I'm sorry, Celia said softly. Emma said nothing. This is Nathaniel, Celia continued, nudging the boy forward. He looked up, nervous. Hi. I'm Nate, he said. Barely audible. Emma's eyes didn't soften. Her voice was cold. I know who you are. Celia lowered her gaze. We'll go now. Emma stepped aside without another word. That night, back home, the house was too quiet. Her mother's absence screamed in every corner. Photos lined the fireplace, smiling vacations, birthday parties, a family that once felt whole. Now it felt like a lie. In the kitchen, Emma stood alone, clutching a mug of untouched tea. Her father came in, loosened his tie, and hesitated. I didn't want you to find out like that, he said gently. She didn't look at him. Then you shouldn't have brought them to her funeral. She was their family, too, he said. Emma turned sharply. She was my mother. And you? What were you to her, really? He looked hurt, but said nothing. She left the tea on the counter and walked away, retreating to her room, locking the door. That night, Emma lay in bed, eyes wide open. And somewhere down the hall, she thought she heard small footsteps. A child moving through a house where he, too, did not belong. But Emma did not move. She only stared at the ceiling, letting silence wrap around her grief like a second skin. Chapter 2. The first dinner together. The first dinner without her mother already felt like a punishment. The dining table. Once a place filled with warmth, laughter, and Elise's delicate cooking, now sat heavy with awkwardness. The silverware clinked louder than usual. The silence between each sound was deafening. Emma sat at the far end of the table, her posture straight, her face carved in stone. She didn't look up. Celia had made dinner, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and roasted carrots. It smelled good. almost exactly the way her mother used to make it. That fact alone made Emma's chest ache. She stared at her plate but didn't touch her fork. Across from her sat Nathaniel, perched on the edge of his chair like he might fall off. His hands were folded in his lap. His eyes flicked between Emma and his food. He looked like he wanted to speak but didn't know how. Robert tried. "Emma," he began, forcing his voice to sound normal. "Celia thought meatloaf was something you used to enjoy." "I did," she said flatly, "when Mom made it." A knife cut deeper in her father's eyes than any blade could have. He nodded silently and returned to his food. The scraping of Nathaniel's fork against his plate was the only sound for a long time. Then he turned toward her, hesitant. I helped make the mashed potatoes," he offered, his voice hopeful. Emma glanced at him for the briefest moment. "Good for you," she replied coldly. The light in his eyes dimmed, but he didn't look away. He seemed to be studying her like a complicated puzzle he desperately wanted to solve. Celia cleared her throat. "Emma, I know this isn't easy. And I don't expect you to accept any of this overnight. But I want you to know I'm not trying to replace anyone." Emma laughed once, short and bitter. "You already did." "No," Celia said softly. "I didn't." Elise was kind. She was the one who told your father to do the right thing. She. "Don't," Emma snapped, dropping her fork with a loud clatter. "Don't you dare say her name." Silence fell over the table again. Nathaniel looked down at his plate, his small hands trembling slightly. Emma stood. "I'm not hungry." She left the table without waiting for permission, climbed the stairs 2 at a time, and shut her bedroom door behind her. She didn't slam it. That would have meant she cared enough to make a point. Inside her room, Emma leaned against the door. Her hands clenched into fists. She hated them. She hated how calm they were. She hated how Celia looked at her like she understood. She hated that little boy's eyes most of all, so wide, so full of something that looked like love. And worse, guilt. She sat down on the edge of her bed and looked at her phone. A photo of her and her mother smiled back at her from the lock screen, taken on a beach in Cannon Beach last spring. Her mother's hair was tousled by the wind, her smile wide. Her arm wrapped around Emma's shoulder. Emma felt her throat tighten. Her phone buzzed. A message from her father. "You don't have to eat with us." "I understand, but I'd like you to at least try." For her. Emma didn't respond. A moment later, there was a soft knock at the door. She stayed silent. Another knock. Then a little voice. "I left a cookie outside your door. I made it for you. I hope you like chocolate chips." Emma stayed still. She heard the sound of footsteps retreating. She waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then she opened the door. There it was, a single cookie on a napkin. A little uneven. Slightly burnt on the edges. It looked terrible. And for some reason, she picked it up. She sat back down, turned it over in her hand, and stared. Then, almost unwillingly, she took a small bite. It was too sweet. She wiped her eyes, but no tears had fallen. Not yet. Chapter 3. The Memory of Lavender. The next morning, the house was still. Sunlight streamed through Emma's window, casting long, slanted beams across her desk. Dust floated in the light like little ghosts, quiet, weightless, and watching. Emma sat on her bed, the half-eaten cookie still on her nightstand. She hadn't thrown it away. That surprised even her. Downstairs, she heard the faint clinking of dishes, the soft hum of voices. She didn't go down. Instead, she opened her closet and pulled out a cardboard box tucked behind an old suitcase. On the lid, written in faded marker, were the words "Mom's Things." She hadn't opened it since the funeral home returned them. Her hands trembled as she lifted the top. Inside were simple items, a silk scarf in a pale lilac hue, the one her mother wore every Easter. A worn leather journal, filled with notes and half-finished poems, a bottle of lavender-scented hand lotion, half empty. Emma picked up the bottle and slowly opened the cap. The smell hit her instantly, familiar, soft, heartbreakingly warm. Lavender. Her mother's scent. The same one that lingered in the hallway at night. The same one she buried her face into when her mother hugged her after a long day at school. It was too much. She dropped the bottle, and it thudded against the floor, rolling under the bed. Emma squeezed her eyes shut. The past rushed in like a storm. She was 8 again, curled in her mother's arms as they read together by the fireplace. She was 13, crying over her first failed math test, and her mother telling her, "Failure doesn't define you, baby. Getting up does." She was 17, sitting at the kitchen table, watching her mother silently fold a letter from the hospital. Emma had asked if everything was okay. Her mother had smiled too brightly and said yes. She had always smiled too brightly. Later that day, Emma ventured downstairs. Quietly. She had no intention of talking. She just wanted to breathe. As she walked past the living room, she heard a soft voice. "Don't worry. Mama said Emma's just sad. She doesn't hate me, I think." Emma paused. Nathaniel was sitting cross-legged on the rug, holding a plush dinosaur in one hand and talking to it in a hushed whisper. She used to have a mom too, and now she only has us. That must feel lonely. The dinosaur didn't reply, of course, but Nathaniel nodded solemnly. Emma took one step forward, and the floor creaked. Nathaniel spun around. His eyes widened, and he scrambled to his feet. I didn't know you were." "It's okay," she said, her voice softer than expected. Nathaniel fidgeted with the plush toy. "I wasn't saying anything bad." "I know." A pause. A long, awkward silence settled between them like fog. Then Nathaniel held out the dinosaur. "This is Max. He helps when I feel alone. Do you want to borrow him?" Emma blinked. The gesture was so sincere, so pure, it knocked the air out of her. She looked at Max, the green stitching around one ear, the loose thread near his paw. "No, thank you," she said gently. "But Max is lucky to have you." Nathaniel beamed, even if just for a second. And Emma, without quite knowing why, sat down on the edge of the couch. She didn't speak. She just watched as Nathaniel began lining up his toy dinosaurs, telling a story about a big storm and how the smallest dinosaur helped save the herd. For the first time in weeks, Emma didn't feel like running away. Chapter 4. A letter from the past. It was raining the next afternoon, one of those long, steady rains that seemed to soak not just the streets, but the sky itself. The gray clouds sagged low over Portland, and the house felt colder than usual. Emma had planned to spend the day in her room, working remotely from her laptop, but after hours staring blankly at code she couldn't care less about, she closed the screen with a sigh and walked downstairs. The house was quiet. Nathaniel must have been at school. Celia was likely at her baking workshop. Her father's car was gone. Alone. She wandered through the hallway toward the study, her mother's old sanctuary. No one had used it in months. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Dust clung to the shelves, and the books still sat in their usual places, alphabetized and well-loved. On the desk sat a half-burned candle and a small ceramic bowl filled with dried lavender petals. Emma exhaled slowly. She ran her fingers along the desk's edge, pausing when she noticed something odd, a thick envelope tucked beneath the drawer lining. The corner barely peeked out, yellowed with time. Curious. She carefully pulled it free. Her name was written on it. Emma, in her mother's elegant handwriting. She didn't breathe as she opened it. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And oh, how that breaks my heart to know you're seeing this without me there to hold you. There are things I should have said while I was alive, but I was afraid. Afraid I'd break the illusion of our perfect little world. But you're stronger than I ever was, and you deserve the truth. Yes, your father made a mistake. A painful one. But what you might never understand, unless you one day stand where I stood, is how love doesn't always end because it's hurt. Sometimes it stays, even in brokenness. I chose to forgive him. Not because I was weak, but because I saw how much he regretted it. And because I knew you still needed a father you could look up to. Nathaniel is not the result of betrayal. He is the result of consequence and grace. I met Celia once, privately. She was scared. She never asked to take anything from me. And Nathaniel, that sweet boy, he was never to blame for the choices adults made. You don't have to love them, Emma. But please don't let anger build the walls of your future. If you're hurting, let it out. If you're confused, ask. And if you're tired of hating, let it go. You are my light. You always have been. With all the love I'll never stop giving. Mom. Emma didn't realize she was crying until her tears blurred the page. She folded the letter with shaking hands and held it to her chest, breathing in shallow gasps as if each word had cracked her open. Her mother had known the storm that would come, known how lost she'd feel. And still, she chose to forgive. Emma wiped her eyes, but the heaviness stayed. The anger, long worn like armor, no longer felt useful. Just heavy. Down the hallway. The front door clicked. Emma, came a small voice. Nathaniel. She sat up, hastily hiding the letter back in its envelope, not ready to speak. Not yet. I brought you something, he called gently. It's a drawing. You and me and Max. I left it on your door. Footsteps padded away, followed by the closing of his bedroom door. Emma walked upstairs slowly. There, taped to her door, was a crayon drawing on lined notebook paper. Stick figures. One tall girl with long brown hair. A small boy with spiky yellow hair. A green dinosaur. And a sun with a giant smile above them. In the corner, written in uneven letters. Me plus Emma equals family? Emma bit her lip, holding back another wave of emotion. She didn't take the drawing down. Instead, she gently pressed the tape harder so it wouldn't fall. Maybe it wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something close. Chapter 5. Celia's story. The kitchen was filled with the warm scent of cinnamon and vanilla. Celia stood by the stove, stirring batter in a large mixing bowl. She moved quietly, every motion careful and precise, like someone trying not to disturb the delicate silence of a house that didn't quite feel like hers. Emma lingered at the edge of the room, arms crossed, watching. She hadn't meant to come down. She'd woken early, haunted by her mother's letter and Nathaniel's drawing still taped to her door. Something in her had shifted, like a lock clicking open, but she wasn't sure what it meant yet. Celia noticed her presence, but didn't turn around. Morning, she said softly. Emma didn't respond. After a moment, Celia reached for a tray and began pouring the batter into cupcake molds. These are Nathaniel's favorite. I make them for him every Friday after school. Her voice was calm, but there was something in the way her hands shook ever so slightly that caught Emma's attention. She stepped forward without thinking. You used to be a pastry chef? Celia blinked, surprised at the question. She turned her head slightly, offering a small smile. Not exactly. I worked at a bakery in Salem for a few years. Mostly learned from books and burned batches. Emma leaned against the counter. Why did you stop? Celia hesitated. Because it became hard to face customers when you're the woman who broke a family. Emma stiffened. Celia glanced at her, then looked back down at the cupcakes. I never intended for any of this to happen. I didn't even know Robert was married at first. He kept that part of his life far away from the university. Emma said nothing. But she didn't leave either. I found out when I was already pregnant, Celia continued, her voice low. I wanted to disappear. I moved out of town. Changed numbers. I told him not to contact me again. But he did, Emma said flatly. Yes, Celia nodded. Not because he wanted me back. Because he wanted to do the right thing for Nathaniel. I refused to take his money. I didn't want to be the woman who ruined anything more. Emma's voice was sharp. But you still came here. Moved in. Celia turned, wiping her hands on a towel. Only after Elise asked me to. Emma's eyes narrowed. That's not possible. Celia nodded gently. She was the one who reached out. After she found out, she came to see me. She told me she forgave him, and me too. She said if anything ever happened to her, she didn't want Nathaniel growing up without knowing family. Emma's breath caught. She said you were her biggest worry. Not because she doubted your strength, but because she knew how much you loved her and how much pain could twist that love into anger. Emma looked away. I know I'll never be your mother, Celia said quietly. And I won't try. But I want you to know, I never wanted to hurt you or replace anyone. I just want Nathaniel to grow up safe. And if I can make that happen by stepping back from your life, I will. Silence. Emma didn't know what to say. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. You don't have to love them, Emma. But please don't let anger build the walls of your future. After a long pause, Emma asked, Why did you name him Nathaniel? Celia looked surprised. It was Elise's suggestion. It means gift from God. She said it was a name that could belong to a child loved by more than one mother. Emma's eyes welled before she could stop them. She turned away quickly, wiping her cheek with her sleeve. Celia didn't say anything. She simply placed one warm cupcake on a small plate and slid it across the counter. No pressure, she said with a soft smile. But they're best when they're fresh. Emma stared at the cupcake for a long time. Then, without a word, she picked it up and took a bite. Chapter 6. Little Guardian. The following Saturday brought the rare kind of spring sunshine Portlanders cherished, soft golden light spilling through newly blossomed trees, and the air just crisp enough to feel fresh. Emma had promised herself she'd spend the weekend indoors catching up on work, but when Nathaniel knocked on her door mid-morning, holding a folded flyer and looking up with cautious hope, her resolve softened. It's a book fair downtown, he said. They have a dinosaur section. And there's this author I really like who's doing a reading. He writes about dragons that turn into trains. Emma blinked. Dragons that turn into trains? Nathaniel grinned. Yeah, it's cooler than it sounds. He held the flyer closer to her. You don't have to go. But I thought maybe you'd want to. She hesitated for a long moment, the flyer fluttering slightly between them. Then she nodded. Okay, let me grab my coat. The walk through downtown was filled with small talk, mostly Nathaniel chattering about books, space, and why he thought dinosaurs would have liked chocolate if they had the chance. Emma listened, amused, occasionally smiling at his wild theories. The book fair was lively. Families browsing rows of pop-up tents, authors signing copies, children sprawled on colorful rugs flipping through pages. While Nathaniel joined a circle of kids listening to the Dragon Train author, Emma drifted toward a nearby table with fiction novels. She found herself thumbing through a familiar title, The Secret Garden, one her mother used to read aloud. Excuse me, miss, came a voice behind her. She turned and found herself face to face with an older woman, well-dressed, eyes sharp. She gave Emma a once-over and wrinkled her nose ever so slightly. You're with that child over there, aren't you? Emma's guard went up. Yes, she stopped. He's with me. The woman pursed her lips. You don't look alike. Is he adopted? Emma's jaw tightened. No. The woman gave a disapproving look. It's just, children like that often come from difficult circumstances. You might want to be careful what habits they bring into your home. Emma's heart pounded. Her fingers clenched the book so tightly the cover began to bend. She opened her mouth to say something, but someone beat her to it. Leave my sister alone. Both women turned. Nathaniel stood between them, small shoulders squared, chin lifted bravely. You don't talk to her like that, he said. She's the best sister in the world. The woman looked flustered. I was only. You were being mean, Nathaniel said firmly. You don't know anything about us. Emma stared, stunned. Her throat closed around something fragile and tight. The woman huffed and walked away. Nathaniel turned to Emma, his defiance crumbling into sheepishness. I didn't mean to yell. She was making that face, and I hate when people look at you like that. Emma slowly crouched down so they were eye level. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for his. You defended me, she whispered. He nodded. Because I love you. And you're my sister. You don't have to say it back. I just wanted you to know. Emma swallowed hard. Her eyes stung. She pulled him into a hug so tight his little dinosaur backpack squished between them. Nathaniel didn't protest. They stayed like that for a long time, amid the noise of the fair, surrounded by strangers and pages turning and the smell of fresh printed books. In that moment, the world grew quiet, gentle, healing. Chapter 7. The Wall Comes Down. The cemetery was quiet, as if even the wind knew to lower its voice. Emma hadn't planned to go. She hadn't visited since the funeral. But after what happened at the book fair, something in her heart tugged insistently. A thread that had been pulled loose for weeks was now unraveling, softly, steadily. That morning, she'd asked Nathaniel if he wanted to come with her. He'd nodded without hesitation. Now, they stood together beneath a canopy of birch trees, the grass damp from the rain a few days earlier. The headstone stood simple and elegant. Elise Rowe, loving mother, beloved wife, gentle strength in a fragile world. 1970 to 2023. Emma stared at the stone for a long time. She didn't cry. Not yet. Nathaniel stood beside her, holding a small bouquet of white daisies he'd picked from the garden. He looked uncertain. Can I put these here? Emma gave a small nod. She would have liked that. Daisies were her favorite. He stepped forward and placed the bouquet at the base of the headstone. Then he turned back to Emma, unsure whether he should speak. She took a deep breath. Hey, Mom, she began. Her voice low and soft, the words coming slowly. It's me. I know I haven't come. I didn't know how to talk to you when I was still angry. She paused. Nathaniel looked up at her with wide, silent eyes. I thought I hated him, Emma continued, for what he did, for bringing them into our lives. But the truth is, I hated how everything changed. I hated how it made me question what we had, what you and I had. Her voice cracked. She swallowed. But I've been wrong about some things. About a lot of things, maybe. She turned and looked down at Nathaniel. This little guy, he's not what I thought. He's kind. He's brave. He's the only one who ever stood up for me when someone said something cruel. Nathaniel's face turned red, but he didn't look away. Emma looked back at the grave. You were right to forgive. You always were better at that than I am. A long silence followed. Then Emma knelt, placing her palm gently on the cold stone. I'm going to try, Mom. I'm going to try to forgive like you did. For him. For me. She stayed that way for a moment, head bowed, heart finally loosening in her chest. Nathaniel shifted beside her. Can I say something too? Emma nodded. He stepped forward, shy. Hi, Miss Elise. Mom, Emma's mom. Emma nearly smiled at that. I didn't get to meet you, he said. But I think you were really nice. And I promise I'll take care of Emma. I'll always share my snacks. And I'll never let anyone say bad things about her. Emma's eyes welled. Nathaniel hesitated. Do you think she hears us? Emma looked up at the sky, the clouds slowly parting to let through a beam of sunlight. The breeze shifted through the trees, carrying the scent of earth and early spring blossoms. I think she does, she whispered. Nathaniel reached for her hand. And this time, Emma didn't pull away. Chapter 8. Pieces of a new beginning. The sun filtered gently through the kitchen window, casting long golden lines across the countertop where flour was already dusted in soft layers. Celia's hands worked silently, kneading dough with the care of someone who knew the rhythm by heart. Emma stood across from her, arms crossed, half uncertain, half amused. "So, this is your secret cinnamon roll recipe?" she asked, her voice still awkward, but lighter than it had been in weeks. Celia smiled without looking up. "Secret enough that I don't even write it down. Only the dough knows." Emma almost chuckled. Almost. It had been 3 days since the visit to the cemetery. Something inside her had shifted, not fully changed, but softened. The walls were still there, but no longer built for war. They were weathered now, and Emma wasn't reinforcing them anymore. Nathaniel had sensed it. He followed her around the house like a little duckling, asking questions, bringing her books to read, even trying to help with her work by offering dinosaur stickers as brain fuel. Emma hadn't minded. This morning, when Celia asked if she wanted to help with baking, Emma surprised herself by saying yes. "Here," Celia said, sliding a bowl across the counter. "Cinnamon sugar filling. Mix it gently or it clumps." Emma picked up the spoon and stirred. The scent wafted up immediately, warm, spicy, nostalgic. "Mom used to make something like this. Only with cardamom." Celia looked up. "I didn't know that." Emma nodded. "Yeah, she loved Scandinavian baking," said it reminded her of her grandmother. Celia's gaze softened. "She was a beautiful person, Emma." Emma paused, then glanced at her. "She forgave you." "I'm still trying." Celia swallowed, then wiped her hands on a cloth. "That's more than I deserve. And I want you to know I never expect us to be close. But if someday you and I can have even a little peace, that's enough." Emma didn't reply, but she didn't walk away either. Later that afternoon, while the cinnamon rolls were baking, Emma found herself in the living room with Nathaniel. He sat cross-legged on the floor, building a tiny space station with Legos. He looked up as she entered. "Can you help me make the rocket ship?" Emma knelt beside him. "Sure, but only if I get to design the engine." Nathaniel's eyes lit up. "Deal." They worked in silence at first, Emma fumbling with the small pieces while Nathaniel expertly clipped them together. "Why do you like space so much?" she asked after a while. He shrugged. "It's quiet up there. And far away. Like, no one can hurt you in space." Emma's heart ached a little. He picked up a Lego astronaut and held it up. "This one's you. She's the commander." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Me?" "Yeah." Nathaniel nodded. "Because you're strong and smart, and even when you were mad at me, I still wanted to be like you." The words caught her off guard. She looked at him, this small boy with such big emotions, such tender hope, and something in her chest unraveled a little more. She reached over, gently adjusted his crooked astronaut helmet. "Then I guess I'd better make sure I lead this mission right." Nathaniel beamed. That evening, the family sat around the table. Fresh cinnamon rolls sat in the center, steaming and golden. Robert poured milk into glasses, while Celia lit a small candle. Nathaniel already had frosting on his chin and was telling a story about how their Lego base had survived a meteor storm. Emma laughed. It was a small sound, but it was real. She looked around the table, at her complicated father, at the woman she'd once refused to see as anything but an intruder, and at the boy who was now somehow her little brother. They weren't the family she remembered. But maybe, just maybe, they were becoming the family she needed now. Chapter 9. A storm in the night. The rain returned without warning, furious, relentless, pounding against the windows like fists on glass. Emma woke with a jolt. The thunder shook the house, and for a moment, she wasn't sure what had woken her, the storm or the sound of something much softer, almost inaudible. Then she heard it again. A cough, faint but hoarse, followed by another. Emma threw off her blanket and rushed into the hallway. The lights were off, the silence between thunderclaps eerily hollow. She moved quickly to Nathaniel's room and pushed open the door. He was curled up in bed, face flushed red, damp hair clinging to his forehead. The sheets were tangled, his breathing shallow and fast. "Hey," Emma whispered, kneeling beside him. "Nathaniel?" He stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Emma." His voice was barely a whisper. Emma reached out, placed a hand on his forehead. He was burning up. "Oh no!" She ran down the hallway, calling out, "Dad." "Celia." Within moments, Robert came stumbling from the master bedroom, Celia close behind. One look at Nathaniel and Celia was at his side, already reaching for a thermometer. Emma stood beside them. "Heart pounding." 102.6, Celia murmured. "He's had a mild cough since yesterday, but I thought it was nothing," she said, panic creeping into her voice. "We need to take him in," Robert said, already grabbing the keys. "This isn't just a cold." "I'm coming," Emma said without hesitation. The ride to the hospital was a blur of red lights and raindrops. Nathaniel lay across the back seat with his head on Emma's lap, her hand cradling his cheek. She whispered to him the whole ride, stories about the Lego astronauts and cinnamon rolls waiting at home. Anything to keep his mind anchored to her voice. At the ER, the fluorescent lights felt too bright. Nurses moved fast, urgent. Nathaniel was wheeled away for tests. Emma tried to follow, but a nurse gently held her back. "Family only," the woman said. "She is family," Robert said firmly. "She's his sister." Emma didn't speak. Her throat was too tight. Hours passed in a haze. They sat together in the waiting room, Emma, Celia, Robert, silent, exhausted, afraid. Finally, the doctor emerged. "He has a severe respiratory infection," he explained. "Possibly pneumonia. We're starting him on antibiotics and fluids now. You got him here in time." Emma exhaled deeply, finally allowing herself to breathe again. "He's asking for you," the doctor added, looking at Emma. "Just you." When she entered the room, Nathaniel was tiny beneath the crisp hospital sheets, oxygen mask over his nose, monitors beeping steadily beside him. He turned his head slowly. "Emma." "I'm here," she said, pulling a chair close. "You stayed," he murmured, voice raw. Emma took his hand and held it between both of hers. "Of course I did." He looked up at her with glassy eyes. "Did I do something wrong? Is that why I got sick?" Emma's heart broke open. "No," she whispered fiercely. "No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. You're the bravest little boy I've ever met. And I'm sorry I wasn't braver sooner." He blinked slowly. Are we really family?" Emma leaned forward, pressed her forehead to his. "Yes," she said, voice trembling. "We are. And I love you. I love you, Nathaniel." He smiled, even as his eyes closed again, the medicine lulling him to sleep. Emma sat beside him long into the night, fingers still laced with his. Outside, the storm began to pass. Chapter 10. Forgiveness at Sunrise. The hospital hallway was dimly lit, bathed in soft amber from the emergency lights overhead. The quiet was surreal, almost holy, broken only by the occasional soft footsteps of a nurse and the rhythmic beep of monitors from nearby rooms. Emma stepped out of Nathaniel's room just as the sky began to blush with the earliest light of dawn. Her shoulders sagged with exhaustion, but her mind wouldn't let her rest. She found her father sitting alone on a bench down the hall, elbows on his knees, hands wrung together so tightly his knuckles were pale. His head was bowed, as if waiting for a judgment he believed he deserved. Emma hesitated. For so long, she had avoided this moment, the chance to speak without the shields of anger and blame. But now, after a night spent holding the hand of a boy who had once been nothing more than a painful reminder, she felt a new kind of weight pressing on her chest. A longing to let go, She walked toward him quietly and sat down. Robert didn't look up at first, but when he did, there was surprise in his eyes, followed by something far more fragile: hope. "He's resting," Emma said softly. "The fever's coming down." Robert nodded slowly. "That's good. That's really good." They sat in silence for a few long moments. The air between them wasn't hostile anymore, just full of things unsaid. Emma broke the stillness. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her father sighed. "I was afraid. Afraid I'd stop loving you?" "No," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid I'd prove I never deserved it to begin with." Emma looked at him, surprised. "I made a mistake," he said. "I betrayed your mother. I hurt all of you, and I have to live with that every single day." Elise forgave me, but I never forgave myself. Emma swallowed hard. "Then why bring them into our home? Why make me face it every single day?" Robert met her gaze for the first time in years without flinching. "Because your mother asked me to. Her last request, after everything, was that Nathaniel never grow up feeling like a mistake." His voice cracked. "And I didn't want to lose you too." Emma stared at him, tears building behind her eyes. "You already did," she whispered. "For a while." "I know," he replied. "But I never stopped hoping I could find my way back to you." She closed her eyes. "I hated you," she said, the words tasting bitter and raw. "Not just for the affair, but because you were still here and she wasn't." Her voice broke on the last syllable. Robert's eyes shone, but he didn't reach out. He waited. Emma exhaled shakily. "But I saw him last night. Scared. Hurting. And all I could think was, if he didn't make it, I'd lose something again. Someone innocent." She turned to her father. "I don't want to keep living like that. Holding it all in." Robert nodded. "Then don't. You don't have to carry this alone." The first rays of sunlight touched the floor near their feet, golden and gentle, like a quiet blessing. Emma looked at her father not as the man who had broken the family she once knew, but as a man who had stayed, who had tried, who had failed, and who was still here. She reached out. He hesitated, then took her hand in both of his, trembling. And in that moment, something in her finally released. Not everything, but enough to begin again. Chapter 11. Home Doesn't Mean Perfect. Part 3. A New Kind of Family. Nathaniel came home on a Wednesday afternoon, bundled in a hoodie 3 sizes too big and a handmade beanie that Celia had crocheted during the long hospital nights. Emma held the door open as he stepped into the house, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his stuffed dinosaur peeking out from under his arm like a silent bodyguard. The house felt different, warmer. Not because the furniture had moved or the walls had changed, but because for the first time in a long time, Emma didn't feel like a stranger in her own home. "Do you want to rest upstairs or hang out down here for a bit?" Emma asked, kneeling beside him. Nathaniel gave her a small, shy smile. "Can we sit on the couch? Just you and me?" She ruffled his hair. "Of course." They curled up under a blanket, Emma with a book in hand, Nathaniel listening while pretending not to drift off. His eyelids drooped just a little more with each paragraph. "Halfway through the story," he whispered, "when I was sick, I dreamed you were there, holding my hand. But it felt like a dream. Some with wrinkled corners, each one carefully hidden. None of them ever mentioned aloud." Tears spilled silently down her cheeks. She had spent so long building walls, sharpening edges, trying to stay distant. But while she had pushed him away, Nathaniel had been reaching toward her. Gently, faithfully, always. Later that evening, when the house was quiet and Nathaniel was back from school, Emma knocked on his bedroom door. "Come in," his voice called, muffled by pillows. She stepped in, holding a small envelope. He sat up when he saw her. His eyes widened. "I found them," she said softly. "The paper hearts. The notes. All of them." His face turned bright red. "Oh, I didn't mean to, I just wanted. I know what you meant, she interrupted gently. And I'm sorry it took me so long to understand. He looked down, embarrassed. You didn't like them? She walked over, sat beside him on the bed. I loved them. I just didn't know how to show it before. He blinked up at her. She handed him the envelope. Inside was a single folded paper heart, cut with more precision, drawn in her neat handwriting. Thank you for loving me when I didn't know how to be loved. I love you too. Nathaniel stared at it for a long time. Then, slowly, he leaned forward and wrapped his arms around her. And this time, Emma hugged him back tightly, without hesitation. Chapter 13. Trouble at School. Friday morning started like any other, toast slightly burnt, socks mismatched, Emma sipping her coffee while trying to answer work emails at the kitchen table. Nathaniel was humming in the background, packing his backpack with more enthusiasm than organization. But when she glanced up, she noticed something odd. He wasn't wearing his dinosaur hoodie. Instead, he had on a plain gray sweatshirt, pulled tightly over his head, and he avoided her gaze. Where's your favorite hoodie? Emma asked casually. He shrugged, eyes fixed on the zipper. It's in the wash. Emma didn't believe it, but she let it go for now. That afternoon, just as she was finishing up a project, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Hello. Hi, is this Emma Rowe? I'm calling from Powell Elementary. I'm the assistant principal here. Emma straightened immediately. Yes, is everything okay? It's not serious, the woman said gently. But we had a small incident at recess. Nathaniel got into a scuffle with another student. No injuries, but we'd like to speak with you if possible. Emma was already grabbing her keys. The school's front office was quiet when she arrived. The receptionist gave her a warm but knowing look, then pointed her to a small room with 2 chairs and a round table. Nathaniel sat in one of the chairs, arms folded, eyes red-rimmed. Across from him sat a boy about his age, scowling. A teacher hovered beside them. The assistant principal smiled at Emma. Thank you for coming. What happened? Emma asked, trying to keep her voice even. Nathaniel didn't look up. The principal glanced at the teacher, who explained, apparently. Another student was teasing Nathaniel about his family. Said something about him not being a real part of the Rowe family. Emma's heart dropped. The teacher continued. Nathaniel told him to stop several times. But when the other boy said something about his mom, his real mom, he pushed him. Emma looked at Nathaniel. Did you? His chin quivered. I told him to stop. She knelt beside him. I believe you. His lip trembled harder. He said, you weren't really my sister. That you only pretended for Dad's sake. That your mom didn't want me. Emma inhaled sharply. The assistant principal gently intervened. We've spoken to both boys, and the other student will face consequences for the bullying. Nathaniel will not be punished, but we did want to inform you. Emma nodded and turned to Nathaniel. Can we have a minute? Everyone cleared the room. Emma sat beside Nathaniel in silence for a moment. I didn't mean to hurt him, he whispered. I was just so mad. He didn't know anything about us. Emma reached over, took his hand. He didn't. And what he said wasn't true. Nathaniel sniffled. But is it true that I don't belong? Emma looked him in the eye, fiercely protective. No. You belong, Nathaniel. You belong with me. You belong in our family. You're my brother, not because we share blood, but because we've shared everything else: hurt, laughter, bedtime stories, cinnamon rolls. He gave a watery laugh. She wiped his cheek gently. What that boy said? That's his ignorance talking. People say cruel things when they don't understand love that looks different. He looked up. So, you don't just pretend? Emma placed a hand over his heart. Never. I choose you. Every day. He threw his arms around her, burying his face in her shoulder. She held him, firm and steady. That night, when they got home, Emma walked into her room and pulled something from her desk drawer. It was their family photo, the one taken last month after Nathaniel came home from the hospital. She had never put it up. Now she did. She hung it right above her desk, front and center. Celia, Robert, Nathaniel, and her. For imperfect people. One real family. Chapter 14. Family Picnic. The morning sky was impossibly blue, brushed with only a few wisps of white clouds that looked like they'd been painted with gentle fingers. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and wildflowers, and the sun shone just warmly enough to promise a perfect spring day. It had been Nathaniel's idea. A real picnic, he had said a week ago, eyes wide with excitement. With sandwiches and a blanket and juice boxes. Just us. And so here they were, Robert, Celia, Emma, and Nathaniel, standing at the edge of a small lakeside park an hour outside Portland. Arms full of food, folding chairs, and an ancient checkered blanket Robert had unearthed from the garage. "This thing's older than you, Emma," Robert joked as he shook it out. "Older than your fashion sense, definitely," Emma quipped. Celia snorted quietly, and Nathaniel burst into giggles. They picked a quiet spot under a tall elm tree with a view of the water. Ducks paddled nearby. Children shrieked in the distance. A golden retriever bounded after a frisbee. Life, in all its ordinary beauty, moved around them. Emma helped set out the food, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, Nathaniel's request, fruit, chips, pasta salad, and cupcakes Celia had baked that morning. She looked around at their mismatched plates and plastic utensils, the juice boxes sweating in the cooler, and felt peaceful. She hadn't known how much she'd missed this. Not this exact moment, of course, but the feeling of it, being a we instead of just me. After they ate, Nathaniel tugged Emma's sleeve. "Will you come play soccer?" "I don't do sports," she said with mock solemnity. "I'm strictly a book and tea person." "Please," he begged. "I'll let you be captain." Robert grinned. "That's a big honor." Emma groaned dramatically. "Fine. But only because I want to crush Dad's team." They split into teams, Emma and Nathaniel versus Robert and Celia. The game was chaos. Emma tripped over her own feet more than once. Celia kept kicking the ball in the wrong direction, and Nathaniel laughed so hard he fell to the grass. But the score didn't matter. Not to any of them. When the game ended, Emma's team victorious. Thanks to Nathaniel's tireless energy, they collapsed under the tree again, sweaty and breathless. "You're fast," Emma told him, brushing grass from his hair. He smiled. "You're fun when you're not grumpy." She smirked. "You're lucky I love you." He leaned his head on her shoulder. "I know." Later, as the sun began to dip, casting golden light across the lake, Celia pulled out a disposable camera. "Family photo," she said. Robert groaned. "Can't we just use our phones?" "Nope," Celia said. "This is more fun." They gathered together, Celia setting the timer and running back quickly. Emma knelt beside Nathaniel, who wrapped his arm around her neck like he'd done it all his life. Click. A soft click that captured more than a smile. It captured a season of healing, of growth, of learning how to be a family again. That night, back at home, Emma sat in bed scrolling through her phone when a message from her manager popped up. "Emma, can we talk Monday? There's an opportunity in Seattle I think you'd be perfect for. Big promotion." Her heart skipped. Seattle. A new city. A new job. A chance to step fully into her future. But also, distance. From Nathaniel. From this home she'd only just begun to accept. From the family she'd fought so long to hate and now had learned to love. She put the phone down, heart suddenly tangled in a quiet war. Outside her room, she heard a small knock. Nathaniel poked his head in. "Hey, Emma." "Yeah? Thanks for coming to the picnic. It was the best day ever." She smiled, swallowing the lump rising in her throat. "Mine too." He came in, gave her a quick hug, then darted off to bed. Emma sat there a while longer, staring at the door and wondering, could you grow roots and still chase the sky? Chapter 15. The choice. Monday came quickly. Emma sat in her car outside the tech company's sleek downtown Portland office, the morning sun glaring off the windshield. The email from her manager echoed in her head, the words crisp and tempting. You're exactly who we need to lead this team. The role in Seattle opens doors that won't wait long. Let's discuss. It was everything she had worked for. Years of late nights, grinding through school while her world fell apart. Climbing through junior roles, proving herself over and over again. This wasn't just a promotion, it was validation. The next level. But her heart wasn't racing with excitement. It was tangled. Pulled. She thought of Nathaniel's soft whisper last night. Thanks for coming to the picnic. It was the best day ever. And the weight in his small arms when he hugged her. Emma exhaled deeply, fingers tightening around the steering wheel. That evening, after dinner, Emma sat with Robert and Celia in the living room. Nathaniel was upstairs, humming while coloring in his room. I need to tell you something, she began, her voice calm but serious. They both turned to her with cautious curiosity. I was offered a promotion, she said. In Seattle. Robert leaned forward. That's a big step. Celia didn't say anything. She simply watched. Waiting. I haven't accepted yet, Emma added. But I have to decide soon. Robert nodded slowly. And how do you feel? Emma looked down at her hands. I don't know. Celia leaned in. Emma, you don't owe us anything. You fought hard to build your life. If this is your dream, we'll support you. I know, Emma said. It's just. She hesitated. It's Nathaniel. I don't want to leave him. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Robert spoke softly. He loves you, Emma. You've become his anchor. But you also have to live your life. It's okay to choose yourself, too. Emma nodded, but her heart still clenched. Later that night, she walked quietly into Nathaniel's room. He was in bed, the lights off. A soft night light glowing blue in the corner. Hey, she whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed. You still awake? He turned toward her immediately. Yeah, I need to talk to you about something. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. Are you okay? Emma forced a smile. Yeah, I got offered a new job. In Seattle. Nathaniel blinked. Far away? She nodded. About 3 hours. I'd have to move. His face fell. Oh! Emma reached for his hand. I haven't decided yet, but I wanted you to hear it from me. He was quiet for a long time. Then, in a small voice, will you still call me? Her throat tightened. Of course. All the time. We can video chat. I can visit on weekends. I'll still be your sister. No matter where I live. He nodded, lips trembling. But it's not the same, he whispered. I know, she said, tears rising. That's what's making this so hard. He stared at the blanket in his lap, then asked, do people always have to leave when things get good? The question cut deeper than he could possibly understand. Emma leaned in, cradled his face in her hands. No, not always. She kissed his forehead, tucked him in tighter, and whispered, good night, little star. That night, Emma sat at her desk, the job offer open on her laptop. Her finger hovered over the keyboard. Then she looked up, at the family photo on the wall, at the paper heart taped beside it, at the messy, beautiful, imperfect life she had almost missed. And she closed the laptop. She wasn't ready to leave just yet. Chapter 16. All the Little Things. 2 weeks had passed since Emma turned down the Seattle promotion. Not with a grand declaration. Not with a dramatic goodbye email. Just a quiet note to her manager. Thank you for believing in me. This time, I have to choose home. The reply was gracious. Disappointed, but understanding. Emma thought she would feel regret. A dull ache of missed opportunity. But strangely, what she felt instead was peace. Life returned to its gentle rhythm. Morning coffee in the kitchen. The soft pitter-patter of Nathaniel's footsteps bounding down the stairs, Celia humming while packing lunches, Robert reading the newspaper with his glasses sliding down his nose. And Emma was there, not as a guest, not as a reluctant bystander, but as part of it all. She was home. That Friday afternoon, she got a message from the school. "We'd love to have you attend Nathaniel's parent-student celebration day this evening. He's listed you as his guest of honor." Emma read the line twice. Guest of honor? She smiled. The school auditorium was filled with music and the scent of popcorn and cheap markers. Posters lined the walls, art projects, self-portraits, glitter-covered volcanoes. Each child had a corner of the room to show off their work. Nathaniel stood proudly beside his table, bouncing on his toes when he spotted Emma entering. "There she is," he shouted, waving both arms. Emma walked over, pretending to be dramatically impressed. "Is this the work of the famous Commander Nathaniel?" He grinned from ear to ear. "It is. I made a diorama of the moon landing and a poem about my sister." Emma blinked. "Wait, what?" He handed her a folded sheet of paper covered in blue crayon letters. "My sister is a star, by Nathaniel Rowe. She's not made of fire or light, but she glows when she laughs. She's not always nice, but she always comes back. She was far away once, even when close. But now I see her, in the seat at my shows. She doesn't wear capes, or fly in the sky, but she stays, and that's why she shines." Emma stared at the page, heart full and aching and blooming all at once. When she looked up, Nathaniel was watching her. "Do you like it?" he asked, a little nervous. "I love it," she whispered. He leaned against her, resting his head on her side. "I didn't know how to say thank you, so I wrote it." Emma wrapped an arm around him and kissed the top of his head. "You said it perfectly." That night, back at home, she found herself sitting on the back porch alone, a blanket over her lap and the night sky stretched above like an open diary. Robert joined her a few minutes later, 2 mugs of tea in hand. He handed her one. Celia said Nathaniel was glowing when he got home. Emma smiled. "He wrote a poem." "I know," Robert said, raising his mug. "He made me frame a copy." They chuckled. A comfortable silence followed. Then Robert said, quietly, "I think your mother would be proud." Emma looked up at the stars. "I hope so." "She would," he said firmly. "She always believed in the kind of love that stays." Emma swallowed hard. "So do I." Inside, the house was dim, peaceful. On the fridge, beside old coupons and magnets, now hung Nathaniel's poem. Emma walked past it, fingertips brushing the edge. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt whole. Chapter 17. The Letter Celia Never Sent. One rainy afternoon, Emma was tidying up the living room when she noticed a small, worn envelope tucked beneath the cushions of the old armchair, the one Celia always sat in. Curious, she picked it up. The envelope was addressed to her. Inside was a neatly folded letter, the handwriting delicate but steady. Emma hesitated, then unfolded it and began to read. "Dear Emma, if you are reading this, it means I never had the courage to say these words out loud, but I want you to know the truth. When I first came into your father's life, I was scared, not just of the judgment, but of breaking something precious. I never wanted to replace your mother. I wanted to be a friend, a companion, someone who could help Nathaniel feel loved. I know I failed in many ways. I was silent when I should have spoken, distant when you needed me near. And for that, I am deeply sorry. Your mother was a remarkable woman. I saw that even from afar. She forgave. And I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me as well. You are stronger than I ever was. Your love and resilience inspire me every day. I want to be part of your family, not to erase the past, but to build a better future. With all my heart. Celia." Emma folded the letter, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. The letter revealed a vulnerability she had never seen before, a quiet courage and a wish to heal. She understood now. Celia's story was woven with pain, love, and regret, just like hers. That evening, Emma found Celia in the kitchen. Without a word, she handed her the letter. Celia's eyes filled with tears as she read, and she reached out to take Emma's hands. "I wanted you to know," Celia whispered. "I want us to be a family, not perfect, but real." Emma nodded, squeezing her hands gently. For the first time, she felt that maybe the walls between them were truly beginning to come down. Chapter 18. Storms outside, calm within. The wind howled fiercely outside, rattling the windows of the Rowe household as rain lashed against the glass. Thunder grumbled overhead, and flashes of lightning briefly illuminated the living room where Emma, Celia, Robert, and Nathaniel sat huddled together under a blanket. Earlier that day, a power outage had swept through the neighborhood, leaving the house cloaked in darkness. The storm was unrelenting, but inside the home, a quiet warmth blossomed. Nathaniel clung to Emma's arm, eyes wide but comforted by her presence. Celia handed around cups of hot chocolate, the rich aroma cutting through the damp chill. Robert lit a few candles, casting flickering shadows on the walls, creating a cozy glow. Emma glanced at the faces surrounding her, some weary, some hopeful, all familiar. The storm outside was fierce, but here, in this small circle of light, they found peace. Nathaniel broke the silence. "Emma, do you think the storm will ever stop?" Emma smiled gently. "Storms always pass. Sometimes we just have to wait them out." Celia nodded. "And sometimes the calm that follows is even more beautiful," Robert added quietly. Like this moment, they sat together, listening to the rain's steady rhythm, hearts tethered not just by blood or circumstance, but by choice and growing love. As the night deepened, Emma realized that while storms would come and go, this family, imperfect, fragile, and healing, was her safe harbor. Chapter 19. New Horizons. The morning sun cast soft golden rays over the row house, promising a fresh start. Emma stood by the kitchen window, sipping her coffee, lost in thought. The past months had been a whirlwind of emotions, but now the family was stronger, more united. Today, they were planning a special outing, a trip to the nearby botanical gardens. It was a small step toward normalcy, a chance to create new memories. Nathaniel bounced excitedly in the living room, clutching his favorite dinosaur backpack. Celia packed sandwiches while Robert checked the map. Emma smiled, feeling the warmth of belonging. As they piled into the car, she realized that no matter where life took her, these moments, this family, were her true horizon. Chapter 20. Together at last. The sun dipped low over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink as the Rowe family gathered in their cozy living room. Laughter filled the air, mingling with the soft glow of fairy lights strung along the walls. Emma looked around at Celia, Robert, and Nathaniel, each face radiant with warmth and love. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but now they stood united. A family forged through healing and forgiveness. Nathaniel snuggled close to Emma, whispering, "I'm glad you're my sister." She smiled, brushing his hair back gently. "I'm glad you're my brother." Robert raised his glass, a quiet toast to new beginnings. To family imperfect, but ours. They clinked glasses, hearts full. Together, at last. Chapter 1. The Funeral. The air in the chapel was thick with grief, yet Emma Rowe sat still, her hands clasped tightly in her lap.